Hi. I want to talk about um, relationships and my experience being autistic and being at 38. I find relationships like romantic relationships very hard to understand how one gets into a romantic relationship and how one goes about it. I've since I left school now, I've haven't been on many dates. I've been on very few, and most of those dates I've never gone past the second date. Not because I didn't want it to, but I just got so nervous and anxious about it progressing or what to expect or what to just like I don't know. I can't really explain it. I just get very anxious and nervous. I don't know how to talk to women, particularly women, females. Um, uh, in the ones that I fancy or like, like wooing, into a romantic relationship, into them becoming your girlfriend. I've never asked a girl out. I've never asked a girl to be my girlfriend. But the people around me, like, friends or family, I've always known, I've always seen them, getting in and out of relationships here and there, and they're having like quick short-term relationships or flings. Because I've never even had that. I've never had a fling. Not that I want to have a fling. I'm not someone that really is interested in a fling. I would rather just have find someone and that's it, and that as in like, I suppose you could say, I feel like maybe my generation when we were growing up, from my observation, I always got the appeal that it was always about the numbers, and how many girls you slept with, and and that's all I remember hearing, from the age of 16 onwards, into young adulthood, was it's going out the weekend to pubs or clubs, getting on it, I met this girl, I did this, I did that, and some of them would end up into a proper relationship, or sometimes it was never, and I never had that, and I never understood how I could get that if I wanted to, and it just always baffled me. But then of course, when I started to identify and like self-diagnosed in my early 20s, and I was discovering, I would go on forums and I would look into, like, read stories from other males on the spectrum that also had girlfriends and and had relationships or more than one relationships, and I would be baffled to think, like, how have they done that when they're all autistic? I sound really, it sounds awful saying that, because obviously struggled and couldn't seem to get that far, but I was reading stories of other males on the spectrum that were, and I envied them. You could say I envied those people. That was those stories I was reading of them being in relationship with girls, and I'd just be like, how have they done that? you know, and then I would think, so what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? You know, am I doing something wrong, or am I not attractive enough? Um, so I had a lot of doubts, a lot of uh, very low self-esteem within myself. You know, didn't believe I was good enough for a relationship with any girl, not just your obvious pretty girls, but any girl, just any girl. You know, it didn't have to be pretty. Um, yeah, uh, but as aside from like romantic relationships, even just like relationship with just friends, don't really never even had a friendship with a girl. Um, I don't really have that many friends with guys. I have a small group that I've known since I was in school, um, uh, which I could say I don't really share much in common with them, but I sort of just stuck by them. I just sort of, because I already knew them from school, I suppose. Uh, but yeah, relationships always been a. I've always been baffled by it and never understood why I feel the way that I feel and why I struggle. Um, and people say, "Oh, just be yourself." Yeah, just be yourself. And then I think, yeah, but myself is like awkward, you know. So I'm like, that's not going to help. um, so yeah, so I hope. And I used to think that I was the only one, you know, because everyone within my life that I knew all found it easy, you know, and getting into relationships, getting girlfriends, you know, and whether they were short-term relationship, long-term, or quick little things. And because I was the only one that was seemed to be, struggling or not ever having a relationship, I thought there was something really wrong with me. I thought I was the only one. But of course, as I've gotten older, and with age, obviously I'm not the only one. There obviously has to be other guys like myself that, at 38, that also has never had a relationship, or even older than me. Um, but it took me a long time to sort of really fully realise that, because I'd sort of like, because I was still stuck in the mindset of, but everyone I know in my life are in relationships and they've had past relationships, etc. Um, but I've now accepted, I'm not the only one. There are, I just don't know those people. There are people out there, and even when I do read stories from guys in forums, it's not that I don't believe it. It's just a story on the internet, so it's like it's not. It kind of feels like it's not real because I don't know them. I don't know who they are. Um, yeah, but that's sort of my faults and my struggles with relationships in being autistic, and yeah, worrying. So yeah, yeah, that's all I want to say. Thanks.